The crystal spire reached high into the purple sky of Andromeda Station. Inside the massive building, representatives from across the galaxy gathered for another council meeting. The Great Hall could hold 10,000 beings, and today it was full. Commander Hyun-Ki walked through the entrance doors. He wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Other humans followed behind him. They moved quietly through the crowd of alien beings. No one paid much attention to them. The hall was a sight to see. Tall crystal pillars held up the ceiling. Light came from everywhere and nowhere at once. The floor was made of some kind of metal that changed colors as people walked on it. In the center sat a huge round table with chairs of many different sizes and shapes. The Vorthari took their places at the front. They were massive beings, twice as tall as humans. Their bodies were covered in crystal plates that caught the light and threw it back in rainbow patterns. When they moved, the crystals made soft ringing sounds like wind chimes. Their leader, Zephyros, sat in the biggest chair at the head of the table. Next to them sat the Nethek. These aliens looked almost like humans, but their skin was pale blue and their eyes were completely black. They never spoke out loud. Instead, they talked with their minds. When they used their mental powers, the air around them seemed to shimmer like heat waves. The Quilox had been around longer than any other race. They looked like large insects with 6 arms and skin that kept changing from silver to gold. Their technology was so advanced that they could bend reality itself. Some said they had learned how to stop time. And then there were the humans. Hyun-Ki led his group to the back of the hall. There were empty chairs in many places, including some near the front table. But the humans walked past all of them. They found seats in the last few rows, far from the center of power. Zephyros watched this with interest. His crystal face could not show expressions, but his voice carried curiosity when he spoke to his aide. "Tell me again why the humans always sit in the back," he said. The aide, a smaller Vorthari named Kelthon, checked his datapad. "They have done this for 300 years since first contact. Every meeting, every gathering, every ceremony, they choose the seats farthest from the center. And we know why. Our analysts believe it shows their natural weakness. They understand their place in the galactic order. They are a young species not yet ready to stand with the great powers." Zephyros made a sound like crystal bells ringing. This was how his people laughed. "How convenient for us. A species that knows its limits." Dr. Yunsu heard this conversation. Her hearing was better than most humans, and she had learned to understand the Vorthari language years ago. She sat 3 rows behind the speakers, taking notes on a simple tablet. She looked like any other human scientist. Average height, dark hair, wearing practical clothes. Nothing about her seemed special or dangerous, but when she heard Zephyros laugh about human weakness, she smiled. It was not a happy smile. The council meeting began like all the others. Each species gave reports about their territories. The Vorthari talked about their mining operations on 17 worlds. The Nethek shared information about threats they had found using their mind powers. The Kilok spoke in riddles about time streams and probability matrices that no one else understood. When it was humanity's turn, Hyun-Ki stood up from his back row seat. He had to walk a long way to reach the speaking area in the center. Every step echoed in the huge hall. "Earth has completed its survey of the outer rim sectors," he said. His voice was calm and clear. "We found 3 new planets suitable for colonization. We also mapped 17 asteroid belts rich in rare metals. All data has been shared with the Council database. Any threats discovered?" asked Zephyros. "Nothing immediate. Some old ruins on the 4th planet of the Kepler system. We marked them for further study. Very thorough as always," said Zephyros, but his tone suggested he found human thoroughness boring. Hyun-Ki returned to his seat without saying more. This was also typical. Humans gave their reports and then stayed quiet. They never argued about territory disputes. They never demanded better trade agreements. They seemed happy with whatever they were given. The real business of the meeting began when the Kilok's representative, Vexthaler, stood up. All 6 of his arms moved in complex patterns as he spoke. "We have detected disturbances in the void sectors," he said. "Something ancient stirs in the darkness between stars. We propose a joint expedition to investigate." This caused excitement throughout the hall. The void sectors were dangerous space, far from any star. Ships that went there sometimes never came back, but they also held secrets and treasures from civilizations that had died millions of years ago. "The Vorthari will lead this expedition," Zephyros announced. "Our crystal armor can withstand the radiation storms in the void." The Nethek will provide mental reconnaissance, added their representative. Our minds can sense threats before sensors detect them. And the Keloks will bring temporal stabilizers, said Vexthaler. Time moves strangely in the void. Our technology will keep the fleet anchored to normal reality. All eyes turned to the human section. Hyun-Ki stood up again. Earth would like to contribute to this expedition, he said. Of course, said Zephyros. What can humanity offer? We have excellent mechanics and communication specialists. We can handle supply logistics and data recording. The alien leaders nodded. This was exactly what they expected from humans. Support roles. Background work. Nothing that required real power or skill. Acceptable, said Zephyros. Humans will handle maintenance and supplies. After the meeting ended, beings began filing out of the hall. The great alien leaders talked among themselves about strategy and glory. They made plans for claiming whatever treasures they might find in the void. Yunsu walked over to Hyun-Ki as the hall emptied. They spoke quietly in Korean. They think we're weak, she said. Good, Hyun-Ki replied. Let them think that. The ruins on Kepler 4, did you tell them everything? Hyun-Ki shook his head. Only what they needed to know. The tactical displays we found there stay classified. And the expedition? Logistics and communications are exactly where we want to be. We'll see everything and control the flow of information. Yunsu looked around the empty hall. The crystal pillars still glowed, but the light seemed dimmer now. They have no idea, do they? 300 years, said Hyun-Ki. 300 years of sitting in the back row and watching, learning, understanding how they think, how they fight, how they fail. He picked up his tablet and headed for the exit. Let them have the front seats. Let them argue about who's strongest. We'll keep doing what humans do best, which is... Hyun-Ki paused at the doorway. Outside, alien ships were already preparing for the journey to the void sectors. Massive Vorthari crystal destroyers, sleek Nethek mine ships, and impossible Quilox vessels that seemed to exist in several dimensions at once, and scattered among them, small human ships that looked ordinary and harmless. Survive, he said. 3 weeks after the council meeting, similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On every world where different species mixed, the same pattern appeared. Humans always chose the back. On the trading moon of Kepler 7, Dong-Hyun sat in the corner of a busy marketplace. Around him, alien merchants shouted about their goods. Vorthari crystal dealers made the air ring with their voices. Nethek traders used mind tricks to make their products seem more appealing. Quilox time merchants sold minutes and hours from their personal reserves. Dong-Hyun just watched. He had been coming to this market for 5 years. His stall was small and plain. He sold simple things, tools, basic electronics, water purifiers. Nothing fancy. Nothing that would make other traders jealous. But his business was growing. A large Vorthari named Krex stomped over to Dong-Hyun's stall. The alien's crystal armor clinked with each step. Human, he said. I do not understand your methods. Dong-Hyun looked up from his tablet. What do you mean? Last month you sold water purifiers to the Centauri colonies. I offered the same colonies crystal-based purification systems. My technology is far superior. Yet they bought from you. Maybe they liked my price better. Krex made the ringing sound that meant he was frustrated. Your price was higher than mine. Your technology is inferior. Why did they choose you? Dong-Hyun shrugged. Did you ask them? Of course I asked them. They said they trusted you more. Trust is important in business, but why do they trust you? You have no power. Your species has no great achievements. You sit in the back of every room and speak only when spoken to. Dong-Hyun smiled. Maybe that's why they trust me. Krex stared at him for a long moment. Then he stomped away, his crystal armor ringing with confusion. From across the marketplace, Tae-Young watched this exchange. He sat at a small cafe drinking something that tasted like coffee, but was made from alien plants. To everyone else, he looked like a tourist. His clothes were ordinary. His behavior was unremarkable. No one paid attention to him. This was exactly what he wanted. Tae-Young was a military observer. For the past 10 years, he had traveled to different worlds, watching how alien species conducted business and war. He never wore a uniform. He never identified himself as military. He just watched and learned. What he learned worried him. Every alien species he studied made the same mistakes. They were predictable. The Vorthari always chose direct confrontation. The Nethek relied too much on their mental powers. The Quilox overthought everything until simple problems became complex disasters, but they were also incredibly powerful. Any one of these species could destroy Earth if they wanted to. Humanity survived only because the aliens saw no threat in them. Tae-young finished his drink and moved to another cafe. This was his routine. Never stay in one place too long. Never draw attention. Always keep moving, always keep watching. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Vexthaler studied reports in his crystalline laboratory on Quilox Prime. The ancient being had lived for over 2,000 years. He had seen civilizations rise and fall. He had watched species grow powerful and then destroy themselves, but humans puzzled him. "Computer," he said, "display human behavior analysis." Holographic charts filled the air around him. Numbers and graphs showed 3 centuries of human activity. The pattern was always the same. Humans took the least important positions. They avoided conflict. They seemed content with small roles and minor rewards. Cross-reference with species survival rates, Vexthaler commanded. New data appeared. This information was more disturbing. Every spacefaring species followed a similar path. They developed technology. They explored space. They grew powerful. They became confident in their superiority. And then eventually they faced a crisis that their power could not solve. Most species died when this happened, but humans were different. Their home world had faced many such crises. Wars that killed millions, disasters that nearly ended their civilization. Yet they always survived. They always adapted. How? Vexthaler wondered aloud. The computer had no answer. Light years away, Lieutenant Boram led her scout team through the ruins on Kepler-4. The human expedition had found this place 3 months ago. Now they were back with a larger team to study it properly. The ruins were old. Very old. Whoever built them had been gone for millions of years. But their technology still worked. Massive screens covered the walls, showing tactical displays of long-dead battles. "Look at this," said technician Minho. He stood before a wall covered in symbols and diagrams. "These are battle formations, fleet movements, strategy charts." Boram studied the displays. She had graduated from Earth's military academy. She understood tactics and strategy. What she saw on these walls made her blood run cold. "They were powerful," she said quietly. "Look at the size of their fleets. The weapons they used. They could have conquered the galaxy." "But they didn't," said Minho. "They're all dead." "Send everything to Admiral Chanwu," Boram ordered. "Full recordings. Complete analysis. He needs to see this." Back on Earth, Admiral Chanwu received the data in his underground office beneath the Pacific Ocean. The old man had served in Earth's military for 60 years. He had been there when humans first met aliens. He had watched as Earth's leaders decided to play the role of the weak, harmless species. It had not been an easy decision. The tactical displays from Kepler-4 confirmed his worst fears. The dead civilization had been incredibly advanced. Their technology was better than anything the current galactic powers possessed. Their ships could move faster than light without using jump gates. Their weapons could crack planets, but they had made one crucial mistake. They had been predictable. The displays showed their final battle. An enemy had learned their tactics, had studied their methods, had found their weaknesses. In the end, all their power meant nothing. Chanwu closed the files and leaned back in his chair. Outside his office, Earth continued its careful masquerade. Human diplomats spoke softly in alien councils. Human traders made small deals that barely registered on galactic markets. Human explorers found interesting things and shared them freely with everyone. And in secret, Earth prepared. Military bases hid beneath ocean floors and inside asteroids. Research stations operated in the dark between stars. Human scientists studied every alien technology they could find, not to copy it but to understand how to defeat it. The other species saw weakness. They saw a young race that knew its place, but Chanwu knew the truth. Humans did not choose the back row because they were weak. They chose it because it was the safest place to be while learning how to win. His communication device chimed, a message from Commander Hyun-Ki at Andromeda Station. The Void Sector expedition was about to launch. Human ships would provide support services for the mighty alien fleets. Chanwu smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. In 3 centuries of careful observation, humans had learned how every major species thought and fought. They knew the alien strengths and weaknesses better than the aliens knew themselves. Soon that knowledge would be tested. The Admiral opened a new file on his computer. At the top of the document, he typed a single word: contingency. Below it, he began writing plans for humanity's survival if the galaxy's great powers ever discovered what humans were really doing in the back row. Because Chan Wu knew something that the aliens had not yet figured out. In the long game of galactic survival, the species that looked weakest often lived the longest, and humans were very good at looking weak. The expedition fleet gathered at the edge of known space. It was the largest combined force the galaxy had seen in centuries. Massive Vorthari crystal ships gleamed like diamonds against the black of space. Nethik vessels moved like liquid metal, their surfaces rippling with psychic energy. Quillox ships existed in multiple dimensions at once, appearing and disappearing as they shifted through time. And scattered throughout the fleet were human ships. Small plane vessels that looked like supply haulers and repair boats. No one paid much attention to them. Commander Hyun-Ki stood on the bridge of the human command ship, watching the alien fleets prepare for jump to the void sectors. His ship was officially designated as a communications relay vessel. Its real purpose was something very different. "All human vessels report ready," said Communications Officer Yu Jin. She looked like any other young officer, but her console showed data streams that would have amazed the alien fleet commanders. Every transmission in the combined fleet passed through human communication networks. Every tactical update, every command order, every private conversation between alien officers. "Engineering status?" asked Hyun-Ki. Engineer Minho looked up from his displays. "All systems nominal. The special modifications are running perfectly. The aliens still think we're just mechanics and supply runners." The special modifications were hidden deep in the human ships. Advanced sensors that could detect energy signatures the aliens had never imagined. Weapon systems disguised as repair equipment. Engines that could outrun anything in the alien fleets. All of it hidden behind hull plating that looked old and unremarkable. Medic Sora monitored biological sensors from her station. "I'm reading the alien crew compositions. Vorthari ships have predictable crew rotations. Nethek vessels show standard psychic stress patterns. Quelax temporal fields are stable. Everything was normal. Everything was according to plan." The fleet jumped to hyperspace in formation. The great alien ships led the way, their powerful engines tearing holes in reality. Human ships followed behind, maintaining their assigned support positions. For 3 days they traveled through the strange space between stars. Finally, they reached the void sectors. The region was dark. No stars shone here. No planets orbited. Only empty space and floating debris from civilizations that had died long ago. Radiation storms crackled through the darkness. Time moved strangely, speeding up and slowing down without warning. "Deploy defensive formations," ordered Zephyros from his flagship. "Begin scanning for the source of the disturbances." The alien fleet spread out across the void. Their sensors probed the darkness, their weapons charged and ready. They looked magnificent and powerful, but they were making a mistake that humans had learned to avoid long ago. They were being loud. Their engines blazed with energy. Their sensors sent out signals that could be detected from thousands of light years away. Their formations followed patterns that any intelligence could study and predict. They announced their presence to everything in the void, and something answered. The first sign was a change in the background radiation. Sensors across the fleet detected massive objects moving in the darkness, but the objects were strange. They seemed to absorb energy instead of reflecting it. They moved in ways that defied physics. "Contact," shouted the Vorthari sensor operator. "Multiple targets approaching from all directions." The Devourers emerged from the void like nightmares made real. They were not ships in any sense that the galaxy understood. They were living things, massive creatures the size of space stations with bodies that seemed to be made of hungry darkness. They had been sleeping in the cold between stars for millions of years. Now they were awake, and they were hungry. "All ships attack formation," commanded Zephyros. "Show these creatures the power of the Galactic Council." The alien fleets responded exactly as their training demanded. The Vorthari formed up into crystal wedges, their ships' edges gleaming with cutting beams. The Nethek vessels gathered into psychic nets, their crews linking minds to create devastating mental attacks. The Quillox shifted through time, trying to attack the Devourers before they could react. It was beautiful. It was coordinated. It was exactly what the Devourers expected. The ancient creatures had faced this kind of attack before, millions of years ago when they had devoured the civilization that built the ruins on Kepler-4. The tactics were the same. The formations were the same. Only the technology was different. The Devourers adapted. When Vorthari cutting beams struck their bodies, the creatures absorbed the energy and grew stronger. When Nethic mental attacks tried to confuse them, the Devourers reflected the psychic force back at their attackers. When Quilok ships tried to attack from different time streams, the creatures simply existed in all possible timelines at once. Within minutes, the mighty alien fleets were in chaos. Ships spun out of control as their crews collapsed from psychic feedback. Crystal armor cracked under impossible forces. Temporal stabilizers failed, leaving Quilok's vessels scattered across multiple realities. "This is impossible," roared Zephyros. "Our weapons are the most powerful in the galaxy." But power meant nothing if it was used predictably. From the back of the fleet, human ships watched and learned. Yujin monitored every alien communication. Minho recorded the Devourers' adaptation patterns. Sora studied the creatures' biological responses to different attacks. "They're learning machines," reported Sora. "Every attack pattern they see, they adapt to counter, but they need time to process new information." "How much time?" asked Hyunki. "Approximately 47 seconds for full adaptation to any new tactical approach." Hyunki nodded. This was exactly what the ancient tactical displays on Kepler-4 had suggested. The Devourers won by learning their enemies' patterns and countering them. But they needed time to adapt, time that humans were not going to give them. "All human vessels, implement Protocol 7, ordered Hyunki. Protocol 7 had been developed in secret over decades of studying alien warfare. It was based on a simple principle that human military theorists had learned from Earth's bloody history. If you want to defeat an adaptive enemy, never use the same tactic twice. The human ships scattered throughout the fleet suddenly revealed their true nature. Hull plating slid away to expose weapons that no alien had ever seen before. Engines that had seemed weak now blazed with power that matched anything in the alien fleets. But the weapons were not the real surprise. The real surprise was how humans used them. Instead of forming up into recognizable attack patterns, human ships moved in seemingly random directions. They fired weapons that changed frequency every few seconds. They used tactics that seemed to make no sense, until you realized that making no sense was the point. A human destroyer fired plasma bolts at a devourer, then immediately switched to kinetic missiles, then to electromagnetic pulses, then to something completely different. By the time the creature began adapting to one attack, 3 others had already hit it. Human fighters swarmed around the ancient creatures like angry insects. They never flew in formation. They never repeated maneuvers. Each pilot improvised constantly, making split-second decisions that no computer could predict. The Devourers tried to adapt, but they could not keep up. Every time they evolved a defense against one human tactic, the humans had already moved on to something else. "Impossible," whispered Vex Thaler from his Kilok's command ship. "How can they fight with no pattern, no coordination, no strategy?" But there was a strategy. It was just unlike anything the galaxy's great powers had ever imagined. While alien fleets relied on overwhelming force and perfect coordination, humans used chaos as a weapon. They had learned this lesson from centuries of warfare on Earth. Sometimes the best plan was to have no plan. Sometimes the most effective strategy was to make strategy impossible. The Devourers, faced with an enemy they could not predict or counter, began to retreat. They melted back into the darkness of the void, seeking places where they could sleep until the confusing humans went away. The expedition was saved, but the galaxy's understanding of power was forever changed. As the alien fleets regrouped and began the journey home, their commanders sat in stunned silence. Everything they thought they knew about warfare had been proven wrong, and in the back of the fleet, human ships quietly resumed their support positions, acting as if nothing unusual had happened. But Commander Hyunki knew that everything had changed. For the first time in 3 centuries, humans had shown their true capabilities. The secret was out. The Crystal Spire was silent as the expedition survivors returned to Andromeda Station. The great hall that had once echoed with confident voices now felt heavy with confusion and fear. The galaxy's most powerful species sat in their usual front seats, but they no longer looked like conquerors. Zephyros stared at the tactical reports for the 10th time. His crystal face could not show emotion, but his voice carried disbelief. 17 Vorthari ships damaged. 4 Nethek vessels completely disabled. 2 Quillox ships lost between time streams. And the humans? 0 casualties, finished Vexthaler. The ancient Quillox leader had lived for 2,000 years, but he looked older now. Not a single human ship was even damaged. How? Demanded the Nethek representative. Her mind voice echoed strangely in the chamber. How did they know what to do when we did not? All eyes turned to the back of the hall. Commander Hyun-Ki sat in his usual seat, far from the center of power. But today something was different. The human section was no longer empty. Admiral Chan-Woo had come from Earth. Dr. Yunsu sat beside him with data tablets. Other human officers filled the back rows. For the first time in 3 centuries, humans had brought their full delegation to a council meeting. Commander Hyun-Ki, said Zephyros. We require an explanation. Hyun-Ki stood up slowly. He walked to the center of the hall, but his steps were different now. Before, he had moved like someone who knew his place. Now he moved like someone who had chosen his place. What would you like to know? He asked. How did your ships defeat the Devourers when ours could not? We didn't defeat them, said Hyun-Ki. We confused them. There's a difference. Explain. Hyun-Ki gestured toward the back rows where Dr. Yunsu sat. Doctor, please share your research. Yunsu activated her tablet. Holographic displays filled the air above the council table. The images showed battle after battle spanning millions of years, ancient civilizations fighting and dying, the same patterns repeated over and over. Every spacefaring species follows the same path, she said. Her voice was calm and professional. They develop superior technology. They create perfect strategies. They become predictable, and then they encounter something that has learned to counter their perfection. The displays showed the Devourers feeding on a dozen different civilizations. Each time the pattern was the same. The mighty species attacked with their best weapons and tactics. The Devourers adapted. The civilizations died. The creatures you call Devourers have survived for millions of years, continued Yunsu. They are living learning machines. They study their enemies and develop counters for every attack. Perfect strategy becomes perfectly useless against them. Zephyros made his crystal ringing sound. But you humans had no perfect strategy. Your attacks seemed random, chaotic. They were, said Hyun-Ki. That was the point. He activated his own display. Now the hall filled with images from human history, ancient battles on Earth. Armies clashing with swords and shields. Ships fighting on blue oceans. Planes dueling in cloudy skies. My species has been fighting for its entire existence, said Hyun-Ki. We have waged war against each other for thousands of years. We have learned something that you apparently have not. Which is that the most dangerous enemy is the one you cannot predict. The images shifted to show human military academies. Students learning tactics and strategy, but mixed in with the formal training were other lessons. Improvisation drills, chaos scenarios, situations where soldiers had to abandon all plans and simply react. We call it adaptive warfare, explained Hyun-Ki. Never use the same tactic twice. Never form patterns that enemies can study. Always be ready to throw away your plans and try something new. Admiral Chan-Woo stood up from his back row seat. The old man walked slowly to join Hyun-Ki at the center of the hall. His uniform was simple, but the way he carried himself spoke of decades of command experience. For 3 centuries we have sat in the back row, he said. You thought this was because we were weak. You were wrong. He gestured to the empty space around them. The back row is the safest place in any room. You can see everything from here. You can watch every species, learn their habits, understand their weaknesses, and when trouble comes, you are furthest from the danger. The alien leaders sat in uncomfortable silence. Everything they thought they knew was crumbling. You've been studying us, said Vexthalar. Of course we have, said Chan-Woo. We study everyone. The Vorthari always choose direct confrontation. The Nethek rely too heavily on mental attacks. The Quillox overthink every situation until simple problems become impossible. Captain Jamin stepped forward from the human delegation. He had taught military strategy at Earth's academies for 20 years. We have recordings of every alien military exercise for the past century. We know your formations, your tactics, your standard responses to threats. You are all incredibly powerful, but you are also completely predictable. But humans, added Jamin with a slight smile, humans are not predictable. We cannot even predict ourselves. The hall erupted in angry voices. Alien representatives shouted accusations and demands. How dare humans spy on them? How dare they pretend to be weak while secretly preparing for war? Hyun-Ki waited for the noise to die down. Then he spoke quietly, and somehow his voice carried through the entire hall. We prepared for war because we know history, he said. Every dominant species eventually faces a choice. Evolve or die, adapt or perish. The strong survive only if they learn to be flexible. Dr. Yunsu activated a new display. This one showed population charts and territorial maps spanning thousands of years. Look at the pattern, she said. Species rise to power. They become confident in their strength. They stop adapting, and then they face a crisis that their strength cannot solve. The chart showed civilization after civilization following the same path. Rise, dominance, and stagnation, fall. But humans are different, continued Yunsu. Our homeworld forced us to adapt constantly. Wars, disasters, climate changes, plagues. We never had the luxury of becoming comfortable with our strength because we were never the strongest. That's why you choose the back row, said Vexthalar. It was not a question. That's why we choose the back row, agreed Hyun-Ki. Not because we are weak, but because we understand that strength without wisdom is worthless. Power without adaptability is a path to extinction. The alien leaders absorbed this information slowly. Their entire worldview was shifting. For centuries, they had seen humans as a minor species that knew its place. Now they realized that humans had been studying them like laboratory specimens. What do you want? Asked Zephyros finally. Hyun-Ki looked back at his delegation. Admiral Chan-Woo nodded slightly. They had discussed this moment for months. We want to live, said Hyun-Ki simply. We want our species to survive what's coming. What's coming? The ruins on Kepler-4 contained more than tactical displays, said Dr. Yunsu. They contained astronomical data, star charts, records of what lies beyond our galaxy. She activated one final display. The image showed space beyond the galactic rim. But it was not empty space. Strange shapes moved in the darkness. Massive structures that dwarfed entire star systems. The Devourers were not the real threat, said Yunsu quietly. They were scouts. Advance agents. The real enemy is still coming. The hall fell completely silent. Even the crystal pillars seemed to stop humming. The civilization that built the Kepler ruins called them the architects, continued Yunsu. They build reality according to their own designs. They make the Devourers look like children playing with toys. Admiral Chan-Woo stepped forward. The galaxy has perhaps 10 years before they arrive. Maybe less. When they come, all our petty squabbles about who sits where will be meaningless. So what do you propose? Asked Vexthalar. Chan-Woo looked around the hall at the alien representatives. We propose that everyone learns to sit in the back row. We propose that everyone learns to adapt. We propose that everyone learns to survive. And if we refuse? The Admiral's expression was grim. Then you will face the architects the same way you faced the Devourers. With perfect tactics, overwhelming force, and predictable strategies. He paused. And you will die the same way every other perfect civilization has died. The Great Hall remained silent for a long time. Finally, Zephyros spoke. What do you need from us? For the first time in centuries, a human smiled in the front of the council chamber. 6 months after the Void Sector expedition, the galaxy looked very different. The crystal spire still reached into the purple sky of Andromeda Station. But inside the Great Hall, everything had changed. For the first time in recorded history, the front row seats were empty. Alien representatives now scattered throughout the hall. Some sat in the middle rows. Others chose seats near the back. A few brave Vorthari had even joined humans in the very last row. But they looked uncomfortable, like warriors forced to hide behind shields. Dr. Yunsu stood at the center of the hall, addressing the mixed crowd of species. She no longer sat quietly in the back. The galaxy's first strategic institute had made her its director. Her job was to teach the most powerful beings in known space how to think like humans. Lesson 3, she said, gesturing to tactical displays in the air. Pattern recognition and avoidance. Observer? A young Vorthari named Kelthon raised his crystal hand. Species that use the same tactics repeatedly become vulnerable to adaptive enemies. Correct. Example? The Hegemony Wars 2,000 years ago. The Talkari used the same fleet formation in every battle. Their enemies learned to counter it. The Talkari lost their entire empire in 6 months. Good. Now how do you avoid this trap? Kelthan's crystal face showed concentration. This was still difficult for his people. Never use the same approach twice. Always have backup plans. Study the enemy while hiding your own patterns. Excellent. But remember, this is not just about military tactics. The same principle applies to diplomacy, trade, exploration. Predictability is death. In the back row, Commander Hyun-ki watched this lesson with mixed feelings. It was good to see other species learning, but it also meant that humanity's greatest advantage was being shared with everyone. Admiral Chan-woo sat beside him. The old man looked tired. Teaching an entire galaxy to think differently was exhausting work. "Any word from the deep scanners?" asked Hyun-ki quietly. "Still nothing," replied Chan-woo. "But the silence itself is worrying. The architects should be detectable by now if they're coming. Maybe they learned about our preparations. Maybe. Or maybe they're just better at hiding than we thought." Across the hall, Captain Borum worked with a mixed-species tactical team. Her group included 2 Nethek Mind Warriors, a Quilox Temporal Specialist, and 3 Vorthari Crystal Knights. 6 months ago, such cooperation would have been impossible. "Remember," Boram was saying, "conventional formations make you a target. Look at this scenario." She activated a training simulation. Holographic enemy ships appeared in the air above their table. They moved in attack patterns based on architect technology recovered from ancient ruins. "Standard response?" she asked. The Vorthari Knight Raxel answered first. "Form crystal wedge formation. Concentrate firepower on the lead enemy vessel." Result? The simulation played out. The holographic enemy adapted to the crystal formation within seconds. All the Vorthari ships were destroyed. "My turn," said one of the Nethek. "Link mines for coordinated psychic assault." The simulation reset. This time, Nethek vessels formed a mental network and attacked as one. The result was the same. Complete destruction. "The enemy learns faster than we can adapt," observed the Quilox specialist. "Exactly," said Boram. "So how do we win?" The team struggled with this question. It went against everything they had been trained to do. Their military traditions were built on perfection, coordination, overwhelming force. Finally, the youngest member of the team spoke up. It was a human named Tae-young who had been observing alien military exercises for years. "We don't try to win," he said. "We try to survive long enough for the enemy to make a mistake." "Explain." Tae-young stood up and manipulated the simulation controls. "Watch this." The holographic battle restarted, but this time the defending ships moved randomly. They never formed patterns. They constantly changed tactics. Some ships retreated while others advanced. Some used weapons while others fled. It looked like chaos. It looked like defeat. But the enemy ships began making errors. They tried to adapt to patterns that did not exist. They wasted energy countering tactics that had already changed. They became confused and started attacking each other. "Chaos warfare," said Boram approvingly. "Make the enemy's adaptability work against them." The mixed species team stared at the simulation results. Their ships had taken heavy losses, but the enemy had completely destroyed itself trying to adapt to pure randomness. "This is not how we fight," protested Raxel. "No," agreed Boram. "This is how humans fight, and this is how you'll need to fight if you want to survive the architects." Training sessions like this were happening across the galaxy. On Vorthari crystal worlds, human instructors taught crystal knights to abandon their perfect formations. On Nethek mine ships, humans showed psychic warriors how to break their mental networks at crucial moments. On Quilox temporal stations, humans demonstrated the value of making decisions without thinking them through completely. It was painful for the alien species. Everything humans taught went against their nature. Vorthari were builders who created perfect crystal structures. Nethek were hive minds who valued mental unity above all else. Quilox were philosophers who spent centuries considering every possible outcome. But they were learning. Slowly, reluctantly, they were learning to be unpredictable. The real test came when long-range sensors finally detected the approaching threat. Admiral Chan-woo stood in the Strategic Command Center deep beneath Andromeda Station. Around him, representatives from every major species watched displays showing the edge of the galaxy. "Contact," reported Sensor Chief Yujin. "Multiple massive objects approaching from beyond the rim. Estimate arrival in 72 hours. The displays showed shapes that defied understanding. They were not ships in any normal sense. They were structures the size of solar systems moving through space as if distance meant nothing to them. "The architects," whispered Dr. Yunsu. "Deploy the fleet," ordered Chanwu. Full defensive formation. But there was no standard defensive formation anymore. Instead of organizing by species or following traditional command structures, the combined galactic fleet scattered across thousands of light years. Human ships mixed with alien vessels in no recognizable pattern. Command authority shifted constantly between different species and officers. To any outside observer, it looked like complete disorder. "Are we ready?" asked Zephyros. The Vorthari leader had learned to speak quietly instead of making grand pronouncements. "No one is ever ready for this," replied Chanwu. "But we're as prepared as we can be." The architects arrived like a force of nature. Their massive constructs emerged from hyperspace in perfect formations. They moved with clockwork precision. Their technology was so advanced that it seemed like magic, but they had studied the galaxy for millions of years. They knew how spacefaring civilizations fought. They had counters prepared for every possible tactic. They were not prepared for chaos. The Galactic Defense Fleet attacked from every direction at once. But it was not an attack in any sense that military theorists would recognize. Individual ships and small groups moved independently. Some fled while others charged forward. Some used weapons while others deployed sensors or communication jammers. There was no grand strategy, no master plan, no coordinated assault. The architects tried to adapt. Their vast intelligences analyzed the seemingly random movements of the defending fleet. They looked for patterns to counter. They searched for weaknesses to exploit. But there were no patterns. There were no coordinated weaknesses. Every time the architects prepared a response to one tactic, that tactic had already been abandoned for something completely different. For the first time in millions of years, the architects faced an enemy they could not understand or predict. The battle raged for days. Both sides took heavy losses. But gradually, the architects began to make mistakes. Their perfect formations started to break down as they tried to counter attacks that made no tactical sense. Finally, something unprecedented happened. The architects retreated. Their massive constructs withdrew beyond the galactic rim, leaving behind only sensor probes to monitor the chaotic defenders. In the aftermath, the galactic fleet regrouped at Andromeda Station. Representatives from every species gathered in the Crystal Spire's Great Hall. But now no one argued about seating arrangements. Commander Hyun-Ki stood at the center of the hall, but he was not alone. Admiral Chanwu stood beside him, along with Zephyros Vexthaler and leaders from a dozen other species. "We survived," said Hyun-Ki simply. "For now," added Dr. Yunsu. "The architects will study what happened here. They will try to adapt to our chaos tactics. When they return, they will be prepared for unpredictability." "Then what do we do?" asked a Quilox representative. Hyun-Ki looked around the hall at the mixed crowd of species. Beings who had once competed for the front seats now sat wherever they pleased. The old order was gone forever. "We do what humans have always done," he said. "We adapt faster than our enemies. We change before they can learn our new patterns. We survive by never becoming comfortable with survival. And we remember," added Admiral Chanwu, "that the most powerful position in any room is the one that gives you the best view of everyone else." He gestured toward the empty front row seats. "Power that everyone can see is power that everyone can target. Real strength comes from places no one expects."